March is here, and so are your Iowa State Cyclones. Today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're talking Iowa State men's basketball and their win over Arizona. Obviously, this team at full strength. What does that mean in the second segment? And then finally, to round things out, Jamie Pollard extended through 2030. It's going to be a great episode. I can't wait to get into it. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Ladies and gentlemen, it's getting hot in the kitchen. Iowa State is back, and we no longer have to talk about Iowa State versus Arizona and immediately think of the 48-foot heave. Iowa State comes out on top of number 22 Arizona, 67-84, an absolute dominant performance from the Cyclones, and it puts a lot of hope back into not only myself, but the entire fan base as far as this team. Keyshawn Gilbert back on the floor now at full strength. This team just feels more, it feels great. It really does. Everything about it. Everything is just perfect. Obviously, the gold out. How could we ignore George Niang, Tyrese Halliburton both being in the house? I mean, it was a monumental day on Saturday. That is for sure. Win, 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 win. It just felt like a massive W. Now, on the actual court, yet another W, of course, one of those W's. Let's break it down. Obviously, taking a look at the box score here. The first thing that stands out to me, I mean, are you kidding me? We got 34 points coming off the bench. That is unbelievable. That is everything that this team could ever have needed. This is amazing for actual depth. You know, we've talked so much about this 8-man rotation, but and obviously this team's ability to win in different ways. But this is not something that I remember seeing. Maybe we've seen a couple, maybe two guys have a great game off the bench, but to have 34 points come off the bench, that's a great sign, in my opinion. Your leading scorer, however, was Milan Momcilovic, 17 there. Taman Lipsey had 15. And then obviously 12 and 12 from Curtis Jones and Nate Heisey. Yet another time we're mentioning Nate Heisey in these top scorers. Brandon Chatfield with 10. And then your three starters that I didn't mention, all under 10. Jefferson with 8. Deshaun Jackson with 4, and Keyshawn Gilbert with 6. Now, Keyshawn Gilbert obviously making his return, played 23 minutes. Nothing too crazy there due to fouls. Momcilovic kind of saw a few more minutes than maybe normal. But either way, this team was just dominant in their win over Arizona. One thing to point out right away stands off the box score. Iowa State 9 of 13 from beyond the arc in the first half, shooting almost 70%. That's unbelievable. That is a good sign right there. And then they go 2 of 8 in the second half from beyond the arc. So certainly we're able to hold Arizona at bay while only making 2 3-pointers in the second half. That's a great sign. That is a very, very good sign. Now, when watching this game, there were obviously many moments that stood out to me, but there were a few and felt like Chatfield was tied to a lot of these. Chatfield block on one end goes down. It's a missed layup, and now it's essentially what is a hammer, right? Offensive rebound. It's a putback, but per Iowa State lingo, that is a hammer. It felt like Nate Heisey was a real part of this offense, going 2 of 4 from beyond the arc, 5 of 9. In general, that's a lot of shots from Nate Heisey. It feels like he is now kind of in this offense. It feels not forced is kind of how it felt to me. Like it felt normal. It felt fluid. And that's kind of what I mentioned. You know, maybe that's the one thing we could draw from the last few games was Nate Heisey kept stepping up, and maybe that can roll over. And it appears as though that may be the case. Maybe Nate Heisey can stick in this. And if we can get, 12 is awesome. It is awesome. But if we could get a solid 8 a night from Nate Heisey, this team is going to be better off with those 8 points. That's for sure. Another thing I noticed, I felt like I saw a lot more traps at the top, in those top corners. Maybe it was just the way Arizona was playing it. But I don't know. Maybe I was blinded by the gold out and the 2 stars in the building. But either way, it just felt like this team had more aggressiveness on the defensive end of the floor, just more intentional flying around. And that was something I hadn't mentioned, but it just never felt like that was quite the same. Remember early on in this season when I was talking about this team feels like they're almost too aggressive. They're not quite getting you're getting teams backed up, but it's also costing them. Okay, so from an actual points perspective, is that a better thing? We were actually having those conversations. Is this the right way to go about this? And then it felt like we kind of got away from that, and we started to see maybe that was the right play, and we never really saw, in my opinion, them get back to that just over aggressive, absolutely flying around on defense. And we saw it here against Arizona. It worked pretty well. Arizona shooting 18% from three, 33% from the floor. Their leading scorer, Jaden Bradley, Caleb Love walks away with 10. And then KJ Lewis off the bench with 13 there. I guess I'll mention, just because I do like numbers, Iowa State shot 50% from the floor, 52% from three. But I mentioned, obviously, that's kind of the tale of two halves there. This game was everything you could have asked for and more in more ways than one. Gilbert obviously getting back into form in this game. It felt like there was a little bit of him wanting to be back where he was right away. And that's fine. I don't think that's the end of the world. Did have 7 turnovers. So that turnover problem that we've talked about with with these Cyclones kind of went through Gilbert in this game, 7 of the 16. So almost half. Technically 7 is 14, but 1 away from half there. So that was a slight, if I'm going to nitpick something, I didn't love that. But Gilbert, only had 23 minutes, was kind of benched, if you will, a little bit early in this one. And it felt like that was kind of the game's kind of where it's at. We don't need this to get out of hand. Arizona got pretty close. I think they got within like 10 at one point. Still, Iowa State comes away with the 17-point victory. Is that what that is? I believe so. So still great in that regard. One play that stood out to me, just felt like this team was all the way back, was, Brandon Chatfield kind of pokes at the ball. Him and Curtis Jones then double team, and it's a force kind of steal into Taman Lipsey's hand. Boom. And that right there, to me, was just, I mean, when you watch that, how can you not think that's TJ Otzelberger basketball? Are you kidding me? That was awesome. And this team feels like it's all the way back. Now, a big win over Arizona. This was not a heave into overtime type of win. This wasn't a squeak by on free throws. Speaking of, Iowa State shot 82% from the line. So still back where we kind of have been. Actually great across the board. 6 of 8, 3 of 4, 5 of 5, and 5 of 6 from the line. So that's pretty solid performance there. But my point being that Iowa State shows that when this team is at full strength, there's not a lot you can do to stop them. And we'll talk more about that in the second segment here. But this just was an absolute dominant performance from the Cyclones in an environment that it felt like, as I'd been saying, get the juice, right? You bring in Halliburton, you bring in Niang. All of the fans are just juiced to the gills, not only for that, but for this game, the redemption that this game held after what felt like an absolute just heartbreaking loss last time Iowa State went up against Arizona. It was everyone, it felt like, showed up, showed out, did their thing, and now there's some momentum there. Wow, choking up. There is some momentum there. I do think that this team is in a great spot now. And it's hard for me to basically say these things after everything I just said after the loss to Oklahoma State. I understand that completely. I'm a little bit caught up in the moment, but this is a daily show. That's what this is going to be. So either way, this was an absolutely monumental win for the Cyclones. Looks great on the resume. Very excited for them, not only because of this win, but because now the team is at full strength. Okay, and we got to have more conversation around that. That'll be coming up right after this. Attention, Locked On Cyclones fans. Ever wished you could directly support your favorite Iowa State athletes and be a part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Iowa State. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Iowa State sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Iowa State athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Iowa State is in probably the best position they could be at this point in the season. You're here with Locked On Cyclones by our Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm pumped. I really am. It was a very questionable situation we found ourselves in just a few days ago after the loss to Oklahoma State. You barely lose to Houston without two of your top scorers. Think, okay, this team might be fine. Then you get one back, and it's just not good. Horrible loss to the Cowboys. And then all of a sudden, now you get everyone back. You're back at home. It's a gold out. It's everything you could have ever wished for. And we are back. We are back. We are back, as they say. So why do I think that Iowa State being at full strength is a big deal? Well, obviously, it's hard to ignore the record. 19-1, I believe, is the record when this team has everyone on the floor. And I mean, that right there speaks for itself. Are you kidding me? It's a little bit not sad, but like too bad that we haven't had more games with all of these players on the floor. But nonetheless, let's take the cards as they lay, right? So with Milan now back in the lineup, it seems like completely at full strength in this last game, going for 17, 5 of 10 from the floor, 4 of 7 from three, getting 3 free throws as well, playing 34 minutes, the most tied with Tamin Lipsey. Tamin Lipsey, after a rough game against Oklahoma State, now got his mojo back. Had 2 steals, 15 points. This team is right back where it needs to be. Now, did Keyshawn Gilbert look like Kyrie Irving? Not necessarily. But did Iowa State kind of destroy Arizona? Yes. And what happened the last time these two teams met? I don't need to keep saying it. Okay. So this win, I actually think that this could be a path to Iowa State getting a really solid seed here. Not going to be a 1 seed anymore. Maybe the last 2 seed. And I do think that this, provided you get the last 2 wins on the schedule, this could be a game that locks him into a 3 seed. I don't know if we'll see him drop to 4 anymore at this point. Now, I'm not a bracketologist. I am not on any committees anywhere, but with a BYU game at home and a Kansas State game remaining, so long as you don't drop both of those games by 40 points, I think you're probably fine, just because of the resume that this team has put out at full strength. I mean, are you kidding me? This team was practically unbeatable till Milan goes out, and then they still beat Kansas, and then you go 3-4, and it just shows how important Milan is to this team. Now, the Arizona K-State KU just skid there was ugly, but nonetheless, you get Milan back and you win 4 in a row. Then you lose 2 of your top scorers, and we've talked about this too much. Okay. Nonetheless, with Arizona back in the lineup there at 22 overall in the AP poll, now ranked. Remember, they lost to them when they were unranked technically. That's a great look. That is an awesome look for the Cyclones team. This Arizona team gets some attention, like, hey, they are a real deal. And I don't think that they're not. I think that this Iowa State team is unreal. Okay. And you get that win in the fashion that you do. Now, granted, everything around the game certainly helped, but this team dominated that game. Now, we were having the ceiling floor conversation. Now, I don't want this to come across as I think Iowa State now is guaranteed to go to the Final Four or guaranteed to win a national championship or even to guaranteed to make the Elite Eight. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that this game guarantees that I what I kind of thought to be true. The ceiling for this team is still very, very high. It still is a Final Four or maybe a ball, bouncing their way away from a national championship. Let's not get too crazy. I'm not saying anything wild here, but I do think the team has the capability to. I think that's where it is. Now, their floor, I still do think is dangerously low. And if that's not Iowa State athletics for you, I don't know what to tell you. To me, that is just Iowa State in a nutshell. But I do worry that there is an instance in which things don't go their way in this, next couple games here. So I am going to ride the wave. Okay. We're here. We got to live in the present. Appreciate the win over Arizona. Appreciate what this team can do with everybody on the floor. And just take that as at face value as it is. Okay. But also in the back of our minds, we have to remember what this team has looked like this season. Okay. Lost to Oklahoma State. Very, very ugly there. Honestly, the loss to K-State at home, not a great look either. The loss to KU by 17 points wasn't pretty. It just wasn't. Okay. The Arizona one, I'll let slide. That is what it is. West Virginia came out like it was the Super Bowl. That's going to happen. You give up a big lead to Auburn, but it's like fourth game of the season. So that's too long ago for me to really hold a lot of this team's learned so much since then. So has every other team in the nation. Okay, I get that. But I'm not going to hold that against them. So really, you want to look into it. It's Kansas State at home, ugly loss there, and Oklahoma State. Now the Houston one, honestly closer than I thought it would have been, missing the two guys. I'm okay with that. And the other losses, I mean, it is what it is. But this team at full strength is very, very good. That's at the end of the day what we have to take from this. And I do think that now there's a new kind of fire underneath them that they're playing with, which is great, right? That's that kind of momentum that we talked about. Now, how long will this fire last? Hopefully till the last game of the season, right? Even if you lose on a Caleb Love heave, and then you go to overtime and you can't get it done, as long as you played the way that they are right now, that is, in my book, completely fine. I am completely okay with that kind of a loss. So as long as the fire goes to the last game of the season, that's fine. That is totally fine with me. Kind of talked about Oklahoma State being that wake-up call. And I said, I think they've had a lot of wake-up calls up until this point. But maybe that Oklahoma State game was the game where this team realized, look, nothing is given to you. This team, we still need to go out, play our best basketball, convert everything from practice. Well, honestly, let's go even into TJ Otzelberger's book, from daily habits to practice, kind of tie those up into one, into the games, and we just take that and run with it, right? So this team, I think they very well could go. I am okay with saying that now, especially if they were able to get their normal 8-man rotation out there, and if Nate Heisey is able to keep playing at the level that he is. Brandon Chatfield coming into his own, right? So we don't need I don't think right now it feels like we're getting absolutely heroic efforts from anybody, which is fine. I'm okay with that. We don't need 30 from Joshua Jefferson or Curtis Jones to go 9 of 10 from 3, which we honestly really haven't seen. But my point being, I think this team can operate as an 8-man rotation and be very strong. You might not get 30 from Jefferson, but maybe Milo Momcilovic will go 4 of 10 from 3 or 4 of 8 from 3. Just a solid night shooting that keeps the ball moving. And then he's also, Milan on the floor is just better for everybody involved if you're a Cyclone fan. And so his ability to read the floor, make the passes, right? This team, they operate on such a great level right now, especially with all those guys on the floor. This is the best case that Iowa State can find themselves in going into a BYU game, which we'll talk more about tomorrow. That's going to be tough, but that'll be another momentum builder there at home. I think it's a stripe out, so that's going to be awesome. Then you get Kansas State to round things out, and then maybe we're looking at a double bye at the Big 12 tournament, potentially. Who knows? And then you're in the big dance, and you got to go. So where it stands right now, I do think this team is probably at the best spot they could be. They didn't squeak by Arizona. They got a dominant win there, showed that this team is back when all the guys are on the floor, and that's really all you could ask for. Speaking of back, we got to talk about Jamie Pollard being signed, returning now for Iowa State through 2030. We'll talk about that more coming up right after this. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Iowa State basketball at the best it's arguably ever been. Iowa State football had a historic season. Both of the coaches for those teams, Matt Campbell and TJ Otzelberger, signed to extensions. Who's kind of at the root of all of that? Jamie Pollard. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And right now we're talking about Jamie Pollard and his extension through 2030. Okay, let's just dive right on into it. Now, we are probably all aware of some of the comments that Pollard made last week. We can kind of just skate right by those. That's not what we're here to talk about. Everyone's got their own opinion on that. That is what it is. Right now, we're talking about the extension of Jamie Pollard, and I think this was a great move by the university. And let me just sum it all up by saying this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? We see all too often that, and it's not everywhere, but certainly in some cases, teams really, really close, can't quite get over the hump, starting to see some success, but it's not quite where they want it to be, make a change, and all of a sudden they're worse off for it. Now, I do think Iowa State is on the up and up, especially with the first 10-win, now 11-win season in football history ever. And now the success that TJ Otzelberger's had in his first few years, signing both Matt Campbell and TJ Otzelberger to massive extensions, in my opinion, is the best thing that Iowa State could have done. Now we're going to have to hold TJ Otzelberger from leaving for Indiana. I don't know why that's a conversation, but it seems like that's getting a little bit too much steam for my liking. I talked about why I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's really even a solid thing to talk about, to be completely honest, but it's something that people are yapping about. And with the $4 million buyout, I guess that's apparently not very much money. If anyone wants to hand me that $4 million, that'd be great. The point being, as long we've done everything we can, let's keep them here in Ames. These programs are at, just unbelievable numbers right now. And Pollard kind of at the, helm of this whole thing. Obviously an unbelievable leader. Obviously, we want to talk about Cy-Town. I see, there's been talk about Iowa State's attendance over the last however many years. And see right here, since the 11-12 academic year, Iowa State is the nation's only school to average at least 50,000 fans at home football games for 12 straight seasons, 12,000 fans at home men's basketball games, 14 straight years, and 9,000 fans at home women's basketball games, 16 straight seasons, excluding COVID impacted 2020, 2021. Do I think that is Jamie Pollard doing that? He's got a role. But to me, this is literally just me speaking. That's the fans. That is, obviously impacted by the coaches and the players out on the field. But I think Iowa State fans show up more than 99.9% of college and universities out there. Some of the greatest fans in the entire world. Hilton Magic is entirely real. Pack the Jack entirely real. Iowa State fans, second to none, in my opinion. Granted, maybe a little bit biased, but that's just how I feel. But to say that Jamie Pollard had absolutely nothing to do with that, I don't think that's necessarily fair. Also, you want to look at like the Starkett Performance Center. That's you can't tell me that that's not something we look at. I've personally toured it. Place is unbelievable. When athletes go walking through there and you see the success that they're having on the field and the unbelievable facilities that Iowa State has to offer, right there, that is That's going to help a lot. And obviously, recruitment is how you keep yourself relevant. I think Iowa State has kind of shot itself into relevance. Big 12 championship games out the wazoo, left, right, and center. Obviously, the win over Miami this last year. You want to just look at the last few years. And Iowa State was making real waves last year in the tournament as well. Now, this year, a period there where we ranked number 2. And nothing else, everything else aside, I think this more comes down to the extension of Otzelberger and Campbell and how great of a play that was because of the culture that Iowa State has built here. You want to talk about the Stark Performance Center. You want to talk about the success on the field. Okay, that's fine. I get it. But to me, it really comes down to the culture here. In Ames, it's totally different. The way that the team just, I don't know, everybody plays for each other, man. And that's stronger than anything you could ever find out there. To me, it feels like Iowa State treats everyone as a person and not a number. But that's just my view, kind of looking from the outside in. Obviously, I didn't have the pleasure of playing for Otzelberger or Campbell, but you can't ignore when players are literally saying that, at the combine, or why'd you come transfer to Iowa State? Well, this right here is kind of why. It's very clear. And so to keep Pollard, who's at the top of kind of this whole thing, you keep all of that intact. Okay. Nothing changes. Let's just keep it, if it's working, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just leave it. We'll keep rocking and rolling. We're kind of up and to the right now. Let's just keep moving. This is a great trajectory to be on. Let's not get anything crazy here and try to overplay our hand. Cards are on the table. Bing, bang, boom. Obviously, a lot of talk about college football playoff and what's going on there, auto bids, whatever. I think in the next few years, Iowa State in that conversation every single year. Okay, you obviously make it once or twice. That is going to help as well. But Iowa State is starting to move more into that national spotlight. You remember even just, I don't even know, 5 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, where was Iowa State in the national media? Never heard of them. Hardly ever. And now it feels like they are a very real conversation point, not only in the Big 12, but now especially with basketball on the national scale. In football, it came down to the last, Big 12 championship game, but certainly something that people are mentioning Iowa State. The success that Iowa State's having at the combine right now, second to none. Higgins and Knoll for sure standing out, obviously, as wide receivers, dominating. Okay, so we could have our own segment on that. But those guys balling out. And to see what the culture we've built over the last however many years, now transitioning up into, you got 5 guys at the combine. Tyrese Hunter goes and wins a gold medal, comes back, rafters, jersey in the rafters, bringing the juice to the team when they need it the most. I mean, right now, everything is just, it's a golden age. Not to obviously play off of the gold out, but let's take it, let's take it in. You know what they say? It's like you wish you knew you were in the good old days until they're gone or something like that. This is kind of the good old days. Let's appreciate it. And the extension of Pollard, I know he's kind of the last article that went out maybe split kind of some fans on how they feel about him, but let's not put that at the forefront. Let's look at everything that's happened here and appreciate where Iowa State is at now compared to where it has been. I think this is a great extension, and it only means great things to come. Okay, let's just round of applause. We've really secured kind of the triple threat here in Campbell, Pollard, and Otzelberger. And obviously can't wait to see what happens with the basketball season this year and then the football season upcoming. I'm super excited about what we've got wheeling out there onto the field, and we're going to pack the jack and everything. But this one, massive extension. So shout out to Iowa State for that, and shout out to Pollard. Keep making the right calls, brother. All right, that's going to do it. If you're still watching or listening and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? We're proving it's a Cyclone State here. Appreciate you sticking around. Until next time, Cyclone fans. Sayonara.